He wakes up before the alarm, not because he is disciplined, but because his mind has been running long before dawn. He showers, dresses, drives the same route he has driven for years. He shows up on time, he works hard. He pays his taxes, signs the forms, follows the rules, and does everything a responsible man is supposed to do. On paper, he is the definition of a good citizen, but something is wrong. Not in his schedule or his paycheck or his relationships. Something deeper, something he cannot name. It is the quiet pressure in his chest when he sits at his desk, the dull weight behind his eyes when someone tells him what to do, the silent question that rises when he hears the same instructions everyone else seems to accept without hesitation. He feels it, but he ignores it, because ignoring is easier than asking why. He tells himself he is free. No one is forcing him, no one is threatening him, no one is locking him in a room. But if he is so free, why does he feel like this? Because there is another kind of prison, one without bars, without guards, without walls. A prison built from rules he never questioned, rules he never agreed to, rules he follows only because everyone else follows them first. And the worst part is this: he cannot remember the moment when he said yes to any of them. That is where Henry David Thoreau steps in. More than a century ago, he committed the one act most men fear. He refused to obey a rule that violated his inner sense of right and wrong. He accepted the consequences. He walked into a jail cell by choice, not out of rebellion, but out of integrity. He understood something most men still avoid. The real danger is not breaking a law. The real danger is living your entire life inside laws you never questioned. So the question is simple: who wrote the rules you obey? Most men never question the rules that shape their lives, not because they agree with them, but because those rules were installed long before they had the clarity to choose. By the time they realize something feels wrong, the system is already running, the script is already written, and their role is already assigned. From the moment you were young, the world handed you invisible instructions. Be agreeable, be efficient, be useful. Do not create problems. Do not ask questions that slow the group down. Fit in, blend in, move with the current. No one said these lines out loud, but you learned them anyway. School rewarded obedience. Work rewarded predictability. Family rewarded compliance. Bit by bit, you absorbed the message. The safest man is the man who does not disrupt anything. So you grow up believing that a respectable man should choose stability over truth, comfort over honesty, acceptance over integrity. You keep your head down, you follow the proven path, and you call that maturity. But look closer. Whose expectations are you carrying? Whose fears have you inherited? Whose voice is speaking inside your decisions? Because if you trace these rules back to their origin, you will notice something unsettling. Most of them did not come from your own mind. They came from systems that needed you predictable, institutions that needed you manageable, groups that needed you obedient. And here is the uncomfortable truth. Most men do not suffer because the world is too harsh. They suffer because they are living inside a script they never wrote. If you cannot remember the last time you asked why we do things this way, it might be because you were never meant to ask. At some point, every man feels the tension between the rules he obeys and the voice inside him that refuses to stay quiet. Most silence that voice and adjust themselves to fit the world, but a few adjust the world to fit their conscience. Henry David Thoreau was one of them. In the mid-19th century, the United States was expanding through a war many believed was unjust. Slavery was still protected by law. Taxes collected from ordinary citizens helped sustain the very systems that violated the values Thoreau lived by. Every year, he watched people around him complain in private and comply in public. They disagreed, but they paid anyway. They felt troubled, but they cooperated anyway. They called themselves powerless, and the system agreed. Thoreau chose a different response. When the government demanded a tax that funded actions he believed were morally wrong, he refused. Not as a protest for attention, not as a political stunt, but as a simple conclusion. If the law uses my obedience to support injustice, I cannot in good faith obey it. He knew the consequences. He knew he would be arrested. He knew the town would whisper about his stubbornness. Yet he still refused, because the cost of cooperating felt heavier than the cost of a jail cell. So they took him away for one night. A quiet, uneventful night in a small Massachusetts jail. A moment so ordinary that history should have ignored it. But it did not, because this night revealed something most men never learn. Thoreau understood that obedience is not neutral. Every time you comply with a rule you know is wrong, you place your strength in the service of something you do not believe in. So ask yourself, when was the last time you said no simply because your conscience said no? If this is your first time here, ThinkMate is where we question what others accept. That's the kind of mind we build this channel for. Subscribe if you want more. Now, back to it. Every society runs on two kinds of laws, the ones written on paper and the ones written inside a man's chest. Most people learn the first set early and follow it without thinking. Very few ever take the time to discover the second. The outer laws are easy to understand. They tell you what is legal, what is forbidden, what is rewarded, what is punished. Break them, and you will face fines, consequences, or public criticism. These laws are loud. They announce themselves. They make their presence known. But there is another set of laws that is much quieter. These laws do not come from governments or institutions. They come from the part of you that refuses to lie to yourself. They are made from the beliefs you cannot betray without feeling something inside you shrink. They are written in a language only you can read. And when you violate them, the punishment is not external. The punishment is the look you give yourself afterward. This creates two kinds of men. The first kind asks only one question before acting. What does the rule book say? He adjusts himself to the expectations around him. He avoids conflict, avoids friction, avoids taking a stance that might cost him approval. To the world, he seems responsible, but inside, he slowly becomes smaller because every compromise chips away at the part of him that once knew better. The second kind of man begins with a different question. What is right? Not what is safe, not what is popular, not what is convenient for the group. What is right? When those two sets of laws collide, he is willing to pay the price for choosing the one inside. He understands that integrity is not measured by how well you follow every rule, but by how clearly you know which rules do not have the authority to govern you. And that is the dividing line. Not intelligence, not education, but which courtroom you step into when you decide who you will obey. Once you understand the split between outer laws and inner laws, a disturbing pattern becomes impossible to ignore. Most of the harm in a society is not caused by evil men. It is carried out by good men who have learned to obey without asking why. The obedient man does not wake up planning to support anything wrong. He does not intend to enable injustice. In fact, he usually considers himself moral. He pays his bills. He works hard. He takes care of his family. He tells himself he is doing his part. But when the system asks for something he knows is questionable, he does not resist. He tells himself it is not his place. He convinces himself he is too small to make a difference. He hides behind the most convenient excuse a man can use. Everyone else is doing it. So he signs off on decisions he disagrees with. He enforces rules he privately believes are unfair. He carries out policies he would never defend in his own home. And because he is competent, reliable, and quiet, the system trusts him with more responsibility. His obedience becomes fuel. Thoreau understood this mechanism long before modern psychology gave it names. A system does not need vicious men to stay alive. It needs loyal ones. It needs people who will keep the gears moving even when the machine is harming something they claim to value. It needs men who can look at a wrong, feel the discomfort for a moment, and then bury it under the phrase that has justified more moral collapse than anything else. I am just doing my job. Look at your own life for a moment. When you stayed silent in a meeting, when you followed an order you knew was not right, when you let something slide because resisting felt inconvenient. Those small moments were not neutral. They were rehearsals, practices that slowly train a man to cooperate with anything, as long as it is labeled a rule. If obedience trains a man to shrink, conscience forces a man to stand. Not because standing is glamorous or heroic or rewarding in the short term, but because there comes a moment when a man realizes he can no longer live with the sound of his own silence. Thoreau reached that moment when he saw what his tax dollars were supporting. He understood that paying the fee would make life easier. It would keep him out of trouble. It would keep him in good standing with his neighbors. But it would also make him complicit. And for him, that cost was heavier than a night in a jail cell. Most men never cross that line, not because they are weak, but because the price of integrity is always paid up front. You pay with reputation. You pay with comfort. You pay with opportunities you could have taken if you had just looked the other way. But here is the part people forget. You gain something too, something the obedient man will never have. The quiet certainty that, in at least one moment of your life, you refused to betray yourself, that you did not sell out your principles for convenience, that you acted from the only authority that truly belongs to you. And that feeling is not abstract. It changes the way you speak. It changes the way you walk into a room. It changes the way others respond to you, even if they cannot explain why. Because people can sense when a man is governed from within instead of controlled from outside. You do not need to go to jail to experience this. Your version might be turning down a profitable deal that crosses your line. It might be refusing to participate in a workplace ritual you secretly despise. It might be saying no to a friend who expects your loyalty at the cost of your integrity. Each time you choose conscience over compliance, the world loses a little power over you, and you gain a little more power over yourself. Courage does not appear out of nowhere. Integrity is not an instinct, and the ability to say no when a rule feels wrong is not a gift a man is born with. It is a discipline, a muscle, one that grows only when it is used and weakens every time it is ignored. Most people imagine conscience as something automatic. They believe that when the moment comes, they will simply rise to the occasion. But that belief is dangerous, because when the pressure is real, when the stakes involve your job, your image, or your comfort, you do not rise to your hopes, you fall to your training. Moral discipline begins long before any major decision. It begins in the small, private moments no one sees. It begins when you hear a comment that goes against your values and choose not to join the laughter. It begins when someone asks you to bend a rule for convenience and you quietly decline. It begins when you refuse to rewrite numbers, soften the truth, or say yes just to keep the peace. These small acts are not dramatic, but they are not insignificant. Each one strengthens the inner law you claim to follow. Each one reinforces the habit of listening to the voice inside you instead of the noise around you. And each one prepares you for the day when the stakes will be higher and the cost of obedience will be far greater. Because here is the truth most men never want to admit. If you cannot say no when the risk is small, you will not say no when the risk is real. If you cannot stand up to a minor expectation, you will collapse under a major one. If you practice silence every day, you cannot expect courage to suddenly appear when your integrity is on the line. Thoreau did not become a man of conscience the night he walked into jail. He became that man years earlier, every time he chose clarity over convenience, truth over comfort, and principle over approval. Moral discipline is not about being difficult. It is about being consistent with the man you claim to be. A man's life is not taken from him all at once. It is taken in small installments, year after year, by the rules he follows without thinking. Not the laws written by governments, but the quiet expectations that shape how he spends his hours, his energy, his attention, and eventually his identity. Time is the currency every system depends on, and most men hand it over without ever checking the price. Look at the typical path society presents. You spend your early years learning how to sit still, follow directions, and wait your turn. You call that education. You spend your 20s proving you are reliable enough to blend into a hierarchy. You call that career. You spend your 30s and 40s meeting obligations that were handed to you long before you understood their cost. You call that adulthood. By the time you reach your 50s, you have become so fluent in obedience that you can no longer tell which choices were ever truly yours. Thoreau saw this long before the modern world turned it into a norm. He understood that most people do not lose their freedom through violence. They lose it through routine, through repetition, through the slow drip of unexamined habits that eat away at their courage until they no longer remember what it felt like to question anything. This is the tragedy of unquestioned rules. They do not steal your life dramatically. They steal it quietly. A year given to a rule you do not believe in is not just a year wasted. It is a year in which you trained yourself to ignore your own judgment. A year in which you let someone else decide what mattered. A year in which your inner law grew weaker because it was not used. And the question that follows is simple but heavy. How many years have you already spent cooperating with rules that were never meant to guide you? Because time does not refund what you give it. It only shows you what your obedience truly cost. There comes a moment in a man's life when everything looks correct from the outside, yet something inside him feels deeply off. He has the job, he has the home, he has the family, the routines, the responsibilities. He meets every expectation, he checks every box. And still, when he wakes up in the morning, he feels like an actor walking onto a stage he never auditioned for. This is the quiet desperation Thoreau warned about. Not the desperation of chaos or failure, but the desperation of a life that is technically successful, yet emotionally hollow. A life built on rules that were obeyed, not chosen. Most men do not talk about this feeling. They bury it under productivity. They drown it in entertainment. They hide it behind the idea that this is simply what adulthood feels like. But the truth is simpler and more painful. You cannot build a meaningful life on a foundation you never questioned. Desperation grows in the gap between the man you are in public and the man you know yourself to be in private. Every time you follow a rule you disagree with, that gap widens. Every time you pretend to be fine with something you are not, it widens again. Eventually, you become fluent in behaving like someone you no longer recognize. The tragedy is not that men feel this tension. The tragedy is that most never realize its cause. They think something is wrong with them, when the problem is the script they inherited. They assume their dissatisfaction is a personal flaw, when it is actually a sign that their inner law is still alive, still trying to speak through the layers of obedience. Quiet desperation is not weakness, it is a warning, a signal that the rules you have been following are not the ones you were meant to live by. When most people hear the name Walden, they imagine a cabin, a lake, and a man trying to escape society. But that is not why Thoreau went there. He was not running away from the world. He was stepping back from its noise so he could finally hear his own mind without interference. Walden was not a retreat. It was a laboratory. Thoreau understood something most men never grasp. As long as you stay inside the herd, you cannot tell which parts of your life belong to you and which parts belong to the expectations around you. The crowd does not need to pressure you directly. Its weight is already inside your habits. Its voice is already inside your decisions. Its laws are already operating inside your thoughts. So he removed himself from the environment that kept reinforcing those rules. No schedules, no polite obligations, no economic pressures pushing him toward roles he did not choose. No social mirrors telling him what a respectable man should want, should own, should chase, or should fear. When you strip all of that away, something revealing happens. The rules that were never truly yours fall apart. The ones you obeyed only because others obeyed them lose their authority, and what remains are the few principles that actually matter, the ones that do not collapse when the world stops watching. Walden made one thing clear: a man cannot know which rules guide him until he spends enough time away from the people who taught him to follow them. You do not need a cabin in the woods to do this. Your Walden might be a weekend without noise, a long walk without a phone, or a period of solitude where no one is telling you who to be. What matters is the distance, not the forest. Because without distance, you cannot see the shape of your life. Without silence, you cannot hear your conscience. And without stepping outside the herd, even for a moment, you will never know which rules deserve your loyalty and which ones deserve to be abandoned. Questioning the rules you obey does not mean throwing your life into chaos. It does not mean quitting your job overnight, confronting everyone around you, or rejecting every form of structure. Thoreau was not chaotic, he was precise. He did not destroy his life to reclaim his freedom. He adjusted it, thoughtfully, deliberately, one rule at a time. So how does a modern man do the same? The first step is clarity. You cannot challenge what you cannot see. Write down the 3 to 5 rules that currently dictate the majority of your choices, not the official ones, the unspoken ones, the rules you follow because breaking them feels dangerous, even if you no longer believe in them. Rules like, a real man should never disappoint his parents. Changing careers after a certain age is irresponsible. Success means owning what other people admire. Stability matters more than truth. Once you see these rules in writing, ask the questions no one teaches you to ask. Where did this rule come from? Who benefits when I obey it? And what would actually happen if I stopped? These questions do not create chaos. They create accuracy. They separate fear from reality, obligation from principle, and expectation from identity. The second step is practicing small acts of non-compliance. Not rebellion for the sake of rebellion, but intentional refusal when a rule contradicts your inner law. Say no to a commitment you agreed to only out of guilt. Refuse a shortcut you know crosses your line. Decline participation in something you find dishonest, even if everyone else considers it normal. These small moments matter. They are your version of Thoreau's single night in jail. Not dramatic, not public, but meaningful. Each one weakens the hold of rules that never belonged to you. Each one strengthens the authority of the rules you choose for yourself. And the final step is consistency. You do not rewrite your life with one bold decision. You rewrite it with a series of precise, conscious choices that accumulate into a man you can respect. This is not about becoming rebellious. It is about becoming responsible for the laws you live by. At the end of a man's life, the world will not ask how perfectly he followed the rules. It will ask something far quieter. Did he ever choose which rules were worth following, or did he simply inherit them and call that a life? This is why Thoreau still matters. He did not reject order. He rejected obedience without thought. He understood that the most dangerous chains are the ones you learn to carry as if they are part of your body. And he knew that a man cannot call himself free until he has examined the laws he serves. So here is the final challenge. Before the weight of routine buries your clarity, sit alone for a moment and write down 3 laws you have been living by that you never consciously chose. Be honest. Some will come from family, some from culture, some from fear. Then choose one, just one. the one that feels heaviest, the one that has shaped your choices more than you want to admit, and decide on a single action, however small, that refuses to obey it. Not rebellion, recognition, a quiet realignment between who you are and how you behave. Thoreau once suggested that wealth is measured not by what a man owns, but by what he can afford to leave untouched. The same is true of freedom. A free man is not someone who breaks every rule. He is someone who no longer fears the rules that do not belong to him. So ask yourself the only question that matters now. Among all the laws you carry, which one needs to be set down before your life becomes something you never meant to live? If this made you see the world a little clearer, stay, think deeper. This is ThinkMate.